What is everybody? Welcome back to another FTN NBA live stream presented by Superdraft. Hope you're all having a great Friday. Weekend's almost here, but we have a great NBA slate prior to the weekend. So hopefully you guys are having a good one and looking forward to a nice weekend. We got some of our FTN guys down in Miami or Fort Lauderdale right now. They're getting ready for the King of the Beach, so I'm sure they're having a much better time than we are. Adam, you're in New York, right?
Born in upstate New York, but I've been
Okay.
in PA since I was
Oh,
about
that's right.
4. So
So you're
I've
in the
been
cold too.
which was like last year. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you're also in the cold. So you and
yeah,
I kind of Midwest, and these guys are down there partying in Florida. So they're in much better weather than we are. But hey, we get to talk NBA, and they don't. So I'll take our side all day. How are you doing today, man?
good man. Friday's busy day.
Yeah.
Uploaded the DFS game by game episode of Fade the Chalk. So if we're looking for some Week 13 content, there is that. Of course, we have a ton of great content overall across the sites as well. So yeah, Friday it's always fun when you check the schedule and you see okay, you got football, then basketball, then football, then basketball. But I can't complain. I mean, get to talk about sports. I'm not mad.
Yep, for sure. And we have a big weekend ahead of us. But let's get into this NBA slate here. We're going to break it down game by game. We're going to be here for an hour and a half. Our Friday shows are an hour and a half, starting obviously at 5:30 up until lock. So we'll do game by game. Then we'll do some questions and any injury news. We already have gotten some news here. Tobias Harris is out. I believe that is the most recent news that is, of any magnitude. Looks like Wesley Matthews is making his way back to the Bucks. That's a big pickup there. Some Sixers secondary guys are going to be on track to play, but let's hop into this thing game by game. Miami at Indiana. I almost said Indianapolis. Indiana. We have two big injuries in this game as well. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are also out once again. And then depending on how much you like steals, TJ McConnell could be a big injury as well. He's out for the Pacers, opening up some minutes there. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, Miami should be, Deadman was good in their last game, but as a unit, right, they should be better. You don't get to face the amazing Cleveland Cavaliers every game, so they get a break by not facing that amazing team. But no, in all seriousness, like Lowry, Tyler Hero, like if you liked them last game, you should like them just as much, if not more, this game. Tyler Hero with Bam and Butler off the floor, usage rate north of 33%. Lowry's isn't as high, but his assist rate is absolutely massive. It's like 25%. So like if you liked them last slate, I don't know why you wouldn't like them this slate. The prices, especially on Tyler Hero, the price is pretty high, but he's going to take 20 plus shots, facilitate. Like I think there's still upside there. And then Dwayne Deadman, right? He started in place of Bam last game, was very productive. He had, I think, almost 40 fantasy points. Yeah, just under 40 fantasy points, 11 points, 13 rebounds in that game. Because I wrote about him in the value article today because his price is obviously going to come up over the next couple starts, but right now at 4,800, it's still too cheap. He had 20 rebounding chances in that first game, converted 65% of them. And for anybody that doesn't really know, like rebounding chances, 20 per game is a lot considering the league leader is Rudy Gobert at just over 23. So I think Deadman in a game where you have Miles Turner and Sabonis on the other side, similar to the Cleveland matchup where you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, like he's going to have to play 30 plus minutes pretty easily.
Yeah, I hear you. For on the side of Miami, you mentioned some of the rates that change with these guys out here, with Hero and Lowry specifically. The big thing that I noticed was the usage bump, like you mentioned, over 33% for Hero with those guys off the floor. Last game, we didn't see a good game from Hero, but we kind of saw the elements of that usage, right? 23 shots. He only shot 39% from the field, and he was 2 for 7 from three, so didn't really shoot all that great. But also, you didn't have any kind of peripheral upside game either. Yeah, he did have 6 assists, which is, he averages 4 on the year, so that's a big uptick there, which I guess you could say should be expected with Bam and Butler out, but only 1 rebound. He's been averaging over 5 so far this season. So obviously with the lack of not necessarily scoring, because he still scored 21 real points, but the lack of efficiency from the field, especially from deep, kind of led to a down game, along with the lack of peripherals with just 1 rebound for Hero. So I agree with you. If you liked him last game, you should like him again. And, on the last show when this injury news came out, I kind of mentioned like Hero can at times be like a 9K player if you consider how much usage he's going to have, how many shots he's going to take. So I mean, you could argue that he's expensive here, but with these guys out, you could also argue that he's maybe 1 to maybe 2. Maybe saying 2 is probably a little bit of a stretch there, but maybe $1,000 too cheap. the kind of role that he's going to have here. So I like Hero a lot. One thing I noticed about Lowry is he's not getting any ownership at all. 5% on DraftKings right now since he's 7'8". He's 6,500 on FanDuel, so he is getting about 30% projected ownership over there. So what are your thoughts on the ownership on this team here?
Yeah, and the other thing with Hero is, like you mentioned, the overall stat line wasn't incredible, but his usage rate in that game was pushing 34%. So, like, massive, massive numbers. I mean, Lowry is at a price where he's, I think I'd rather have him over guys like Cole Anthony. If I can get up to Chris Paul, I'd probably rather have Chris Paul. But, like, it wouldn't, like, with Bam and Butler out, like, Lowry's going to get the bump in peripherals, you would think. Again, it was just an awful game from Miami last game, but he's a guy that could easily triple-double, given the fact that Bam, great rebounder, but also brings the ball up after he gets defensive rebounds, and he's a good facilitating center, and then Butler just does everything for this team. So, yeah, like, under 8K, I think it's very possible after this game, both Lowry and Tyler Hero, assuming Butler misses another game, and we know Bam's going to be out for the foreseeable future, it's very possible after this game both players are well above 8K on DraftKings.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. Indiana, what are your thoughts on the Pacers here?
Yeah, maybe you'll disagree, but honestly, the only player on Indiana that stands out to me, and stand out maybe isn't a great word, because like every slate, I feel like Karis LeVert pops because his price is not really moving. The reason it's not moving is because he's been very underwhelming. But it's like you have that upside. It's kind of, it reminds me of like Jaren Jackson Jr. before John Morant was out. It's like he was always priced in that range where you say this player has a ton of upside, but he hasn't been getting it done. But for me, like the player that really stood out to me, and the only one, was Chris Duarte. I mean, and maybe that's a mistake. I know Sabonis and Brogdon are really good fantasy contributors, but like you mentioned, Justin Holiday out. Duarte started the last game, played well over 30 minutes. McConnell's out again as well too. And Duarte is going to be pretty scoring dependent, but at 4,400 on DraftKings, like he's probably going to play 32 to 35 minutes, and if his shot's falling, he'll be pretty good. So Duarte is probably my favorite player from this Pacers team, which could be a mistake, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
On DraftKings, I totally agree. Duarte is really the only guy that I'm getting to in terms of the projections. I have him at over 5x his salary. He's the only player that is over 5x. So I like him a lot. On FanDuel, a little bit different because Duarte and LeVert are the same price over there. You mentioned LeVert's price isn't moving. On FanDuel, it is moving. It keeps going down. And it's like to a point where it's 4,800 now. Like we know that sometimes when you're playing a guy that's 4,800, your ceiling's kind of limited unless you're Jay Sean Tate from the other night when he went for 72 FanDuel points. But LeVert, like even though he's been pretty bad this year, he does have legit 40-point like regular upside, not just like if he gets the top of the end of his outcomes, that's what he can go for 40. He can do it pretty frequently. We saw it last year. We've seen it pretty much anywhere he's been. So 4,800, he's going to be chalky, but that's a lot of upside for a guy that's just 4,800. And now with McConnell out, still no Holiday, so the minutes should be there. He played 28 minutes last game, which I thought was low. I thought he probably should have played more, especially after McConnell got hurt. But they don't really need to push him for a ton of minutes. So, I mean, if he's going to be in between 28 and like 31, 32 maybe, I mean, I definitely think he has a ceiling here. So he's the guy for me on FanDuel, even though he is going to be very popular. I think if you wanted to fade that chalk, you could. But again, like at 4,800, a guy who has a legit 40-point ceiling any night, tough to pass up. But I agree on DraftKings with Duarte. He's 4,400. He's my favorite Pacer as well. Let's head over to the next game here. Let's talk about Cleveland and Washington, your Cleveland Cavaliers taking on Washington. Hey, this was the Toilet Bowl a couple years back. Now we're two much improved teams. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so it's Cleveland. It's a great spot for Jared Allen. Last time we did the show, Jared, that doesn't even count. I was gonna victory lap Jared Allen, but like every center on that slate was good. Like we talked about Vucevic, he went off. Jared Allen, everybody went off. But Jared Allen did go off for 52 fantasy points. Like he's doubled now in 5 straight games. He's just been so good. And like Washington, you look at our advanced DVP tool, it's a great spot for both Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. The Wizards ranked 28th against rim protectors and 28th against rebounders. And we saw in that Miami game where Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley they combined for like 9 blocks. They combined for like 20 plus rebounds. Like that's what they're doing. So I like Allen a lot. I think Mobley's underpriced still at 6,700. The Dallas game wasn't incredible, but what did we expect when he came back? Right back to playing 35 minutes in close games. So this game projects to be close. I think Mobley and Allen play 35, 36 minutes each. So I think Mobley, given the matchup at under 7K, 6,700, I think he's very underpriced. They're the two main guys for me. Markkanen's kind of slid into that 32, 33 minute range, but like last game his minutes were down. A, the game got out of hand. B, Kevin Love got hot off the bench, and that probably had a lot to do with it. So I think if Kevin Love doesn't get hot from the field like he does and project for more minutes than he had been playing, and Markkanen's still kind of fine at that price range he's at. And I love Garland. I love what we've seen, but I'm probably not going to get there on this slate, given the point guards elsewhere. So for me, it's definitely Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, and I think they're well above average plays tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially Mobley with his price over on DraftKings at 6,700, the price kind of went down on him, and you can play him at power forward or center. On Fanduel, you can play both of them at power forward or center, so that helps with being able to get those guys in there a bit more. On Fanduel, I like Darius Garland a pretty good amount. He's only 6'6" over there, have him 5x over his salary, and sub 15% at about 14% projected ownership. So I like all three of those guys a pretty good amount. I think Rubio and Markkanen are also fine, but probably not guys I like prioritize. In terms of Washington, I'll be quick because I don't really have a ton of interest, and I'll kick it over to you. I think Gafford's fine on DraftKings. He's 5K. I mean, this guy's been phenomenal as of late.
I'm tired of writing him up in the values article. I didn't today. I was strong. I didn't, but yeah, he's been ridiculous. And if you worry about his minutes are going to come back down eventually, maybe, but probably not in this game against Cleveland's front court.
Yeah, plenty of reasons to play him more here. And then he's played 27 minutes in 3 of his last 4 games, and he's had 31 plus DraftKings points in all 4 of those games. So, I mean, I think he's in a good spot here. I have him under 10%. He's kind of the pivot off of Dwayne Deadman. I think Deadman's 4,800 on DraftKings now. On Fanduel, a little bit different because Gafford's all the way up to 6K now, so maybe a little bit tougher to play him over there. But as for the Washington side, it's mainly just Gafford on DraftKings as a pivot off of Deadman, and then I don't mind Dinwiddie either at 5,900 on DraftKings. So other than that, probably don't get to Beal tonight. I think there's a lot of good mid-range guard plays that I prefer. So I'll kick it over to you for Washington now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Bradley Beal this year. Like the Wizards have been good as a team, but it's not because Beal has been averaging 40 a game. Like he's been fine, but it's been hard for me to get to him. And Cleveland's defense is really good. Like Garland's been very engaged defensively. And the other thing is, like, yes, you're going to try to get switches when you have Markkanen, Allen, and Mobley on the floor. But, like, Evan Mobley is incredibly long. And Jarrett Allen is, like, probably 5 centers in the league of his size, at least, like traditional centers that you'd feel at least okay about being on an island against defenders, perimeter scorers. So like that's why their defense has been so good this year. Isaac Okoro is a really good defender, so it's like their defense is legitimately good. I agree though. Gafford's the only main guy just because I think he's locked in at 27 to 30 minutes, upwards of 30 in this game with the front court. And I talked about it with Deadman, but the last 3 games, he's averaging Gafford's averaging 20 rebounding opportunities per game too. And like, who do you prefer just straight up on DraftKings, Gafford or Deadman? I think Deadman probably is safer in terms of like, I think Deadman has a higher ceiling for minutes because there's no Montrezl Harrell off the bench for Miami, but they both probably project extremely similarly, like 12 points, 10 rebounds, probably their ceiling, and then they whatever they get in terms of stocks and assists.
So I have Deadman for 26 DraftKings points, 26.3, and I have Gafford for 26.1. So very similar. I will say the minutes, I probably feel better about the minutes for Deadman, like his minutes floor. But in terms of ceiling, I think I feel better about. I mean, I think they both have pretty solid ceilings, but like I think Deadman's safer, but I do think Gafford probably has a
everything about them is so similar, right? The role, the rebounding like potential lately. The matchup, because they're both facing teams that have, a power forward and center on the floor at all times that warrants you to play those minutes, whether it's Sabonis, Turner, or Mobley, Allen. I think they're both very, 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 and it's no wonder they project incredibly closely for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that kind of when you think about it in terms of saying all these things are so similar and they're projecting very similarly, and maybe their minutes are a little bit different, but with that being the case, and there's a pretty significant difference in ownership, would that just mean Gafford is the easy call? 9% projected ownership compared to Deadman at 26.
Yeah, and I think and maybe you disagree, but like I think say Deadman plays 30 minutes and Gafford plays 27, I actually do think Gafford has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I agree. I agree
So
100%.
so I like that call then. Like if you're going down to that range at center, I would probably just given the popularity and everything, I would rather play Gafford.
Yeah, especially if you're paying up for some I guess not necessarily chalk, but non-contrarian options, or using some other chalky value. So let's head over to the next game here. We talked about the Cleveland and Washington game in Miami and Indy. So let's talk about Philly and Atlanta. So those two games that we just talked about were 7 o'clock locks. So if you're not playing anybody in those games, you can kind of push back your lock a little bit. But Philly and Atlanta, Tobias Harris is ruled out. Obviously, Ben Simmons is still out. And then we have a plethora of Hawks out. Bogdanovich, Reddish, Hunter, all out for the Hawks. Just got a report. Timothy Lawawu Cabarro will remain in the starting lineup. Played 25 minutes. Didn't really do anything in those 25 minutes. He had, I think, 16 Fanduel points or something like that. It wasn't overly effective.
Revenge game.
That is true. That is very true. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I guess we'll start the Sixers with the Tobias Harris news. You look at Tobias off the floor and beat 35% usage, not too surprising. Then it's a lot of players in that like 20 to 23 range, right? Seth Curry, his usage rate climbs by, he actually gets the highest bump in usage because Embiid's usage rate is already obviously high. Curry's goes up by 4.3%. He's probably my favorite Sixer given price and everything. I liked him a ton in that Orlando game. I was worried about blowout, but I talked about it because Orlando's bad against spot up shooters, and Curry got off to a great start and finished 10 of 13 from the field.
Yeah.
But his price hasn't moved after back-to-back really solid games. And you look at this matchup, plus you get the bump in usage without Tobias. And then the Hawks, they're allowing the second most points per possession to shooters off screens this year, and the third most points per game in general off screens, as well as the highest field goal percentage at just under 51%. So that screams, Seth Curry. So I like him a lot. And then you look elsewhere, right? I mean, everybody else on this team almost is at around 20+% usage with Tobias off the floor. Korkmaz 21%, Maxey 23.2%, Milton's over 21%. Curry's definitely my favorite, but I mean, Korkmaz is only 3,400. I don't know how many minutes he gets to, though. His minutes have been down because Matisse Thybulle's back playing 20-plus minutes a game. You could go to Matisse, but, just know that he is one of the players that doesn't see a bump in usage because he doesn't see usage. If he hits a couple corner threes and then gets the stocks, he'll be good. Otherwise, he won't be very good. And then there's Danny Green. I mean, 3,200 is very cheap, but pretty much the opposite of Matisse Thybulle. If his shot is falling, he's going to be good. If it's not, he's not doing anything else. So,
yeah, pretty much. I'm pretty much in lockstep with you there. I do like the Curry call, and I also like Tyrese Maxey a little bit today. On DraftKings, he's at a point where he's a little bit expensive to where he's 6,900, so he's not going to be popular. But I don't necessarily know if that's like way too expensive, right?
no.
I think he can pay off here. He'll obviously get a great matchup against Trae Young, so I think he makes a lot of sense. On DraftKings at sub 5%, he's getting some steam on FanDuel at about 22%, but still think he's okay over there at just 6,200. In terms of prioritizing spend ups, where are you with Embiid?
So, Embiid has been good, but it's just like he hasn't been the elite of fantasy contributors because he's missed so much time that we haven't seen him. But I think a lot of that had to do with the beginning of the season where he had that injury and he clearly shouldn't have been playing, but he played anyway. And off the injury report, back from COVID, conditioning seems to be fine. I mean, he just scored 56.5 fantasy points in a game. He shot 3 of 17 from the field. I don't think he's my favorite spend up option. But I would say he's probably top 5. Like LeBron being back for the Lakers tonight obviously impacts how you'd feel about Davis and Westbrook. That would change things, but I would say he's up there, top 5, top 6.
Okay, cool. All right, now let's head over to Atlanta. I think we have to talk about some of these secondary guys. I'm not really prioritizing Trey Young or like John Collins or Capella or anything. I think they're all decent options, but probably not a spot I really prioritize. This game's kind of weird because both teams are in the bottom 10 in pace, but this game has a 215 total. So it's the highest game in terms of that we've talked about so far. It is a 1.5 point spread. So it should be a competitive game. But what are your thoughts on the Atlanta Hawks side? Do you have more interest in the spend ups than I do, or are you kind of just focusing on these secondary wing options?
I mean, the first player that stands out is probably Kevin Herter. I mean, I don't know how he doesn't play 35 minutes again if this game's competitive. He's played 38 and 34 the last two games. And this is interesting because remember these teams played in the playoffs last year. Kevin Herter was like unstoppable in that series because obviously Ben Simmons was there and a lot of his attention was on, and Matisse Thybulle, their attention was on Trae Young. I think Matisse Thybulle, whenever Maxey or whoever is not on him, will be on Trae Young a lot in this game. And we saw Kevin Herter, they just kind of went at Seth Curry. That was their matchup they exploited. So I'm very interested to see if they go that route again in this game, which would make Herter interesting. That's definitely a mismatch, and they exploited that in the playoffs. But even like he hasn't been shooting the ball well from three lately. Last game was a good game from him, but even whoever he sees defensively, it doesn't matter when he's still 5,100. He's going to play. There's just nobody left, right? No DeAndre Hunter, no Cam Reddish, no Bogdanovich. So 32 to 35 minutes seems to be like the floor in this game.
Yeah, I've heard her at 34 minutes, so I really like him as well. It makes a ton of sense. He's still under 5K. Over on Fanduel, I do think that if you wanted to save a little bit more, going down to TLC is fine. But I mean, I think the safety that Herter brings is much. I feel much better about that than with Herter. But on DraftKings, TLC is $2,000 cheaper, almost at 3,200 compared to Herter at 5,100. So, I mean, I don't mind just going all the way down, just punting it completely for TLC. I think Danilo Gallinari is in play as well. Have him at about 29 minutes. At 4,100 on DraftKings, he's projecting really well for me. And then on FanDuel at 4,600, he's also fine. I still prefer Herter over there. But if I had to rank them, I would rank them on FanDuel, Herter, TLC, Gallinari. But on DraftKings, I think I would rank them TLC, Gallinari, Herter, just because of price. I mean, Herter is $1,000 more expensive than Gallinari, 2K more than TLC. So I still like Herter. He's still at about 5X on both sites. But those guys on DraftKings are just a little bit too cheap for me not to have some interest in them. But Herter is definitely the safest of the bunch.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like for the for Trey and Collins and Capella, like this spot is always tough for Clint Capella because you look at it and say, okay, he's gonna be on the floor a lot, around the rim a lot. And whenever you're facing Embiid, like you need to be on the floor a lot so you could walk into a lot of rebounds, especially when you're already an incredible rebounder like Capella is. But there's been too many games where he gets into foul trouble and he plays 27 minutes instead of the 34, 35. And just given the fact that his price is up after having a really strong stretch lately and the other centers in the slate, it's probably going to be in a void for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Minnesota and Brooklyn here. Talking about some of these guys. Cat is questionable with a back injury or a tailbone injury, depending on kind of where you look. I've seen two different reports, but sounds like he fell hard on his backside. So I guess we'll have to monitor that. But he did participate in morning shoot around, so I'm expecting him to play. Anthony Edwards is questionable, but he is probable with an illness. Vanderbilt, who has missed the last two games, he missed one of the last two games. He returned the last game. It's McDaniels that has missed the last two games. He is probable with that illness as well, so I'm expecting him to be back and playing a good amount of minutes. And then McDaniels is out with an illness. So again, a lot of these guys are sick. Maybe they're out there having a good time or something. But McDaniels ruled out, so apparently he got the worst of the bunch. What are your thoughts on this game here?
Yeah, so if Towns ends up not playing, I mean, given the role that Jared Vanderbilt had already seen and earned before he got sick, hard not to like him. He's already starting at the 4, probably starts at the 4 anyway in this game. But then if Towns is out, I mean, you look at his numbers with Towns off the floor this season, his rebounding rate's at 35%. The usage rate's nowhere. It's not what you want, but he's right under a fantasy point per minute. He'd be tough to pass, especially against a Brooklyn front court that struggled against centers. Maybe Naz Reid would get a bump too. But the usage rate would just this offense would literally just go through Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell. Russell against his former team, if you care. Russell's been really good lately. The price has come up. He was for so many times like low 7Ks, and I was like, yeah, like he's gonna get me 35 to 40. So you need, like, I would definitely only play Russell if Towns is out, given the price bump. But then Anthony Edwards has kind of been around this mid 8K range price tag all year, low 7K, or mid 7K. Massive upside for him as well, obviously. If Towns, so if Towns is out, like, I think Russell and Edwards become like fantastic plays. If Towns is in, if you get to them, I don't blame you, but they wouldn't be priorities for me.
Yeah, I mean, so over the last 2 weeks, it kind of coincides with Beverly being out, but I don't think it's because Beverly's been out. But Karl Anthony Towns has kind of taken more of an assertive role in terms of usage. The first couple of months of the season, it was actually Anthony Edwards who had the highest usage rate on the Timberwolves to start the season, and D'Angelo Russell was second, and Cat was third. I mean, they all still had like a 27% usage rate or higher, but now it's kind of changed a little bit with Cat becoming number one, Anthony Edwards two, and then D'Angelo Russell just behind Edwards at three. Now, if Cat plays, I think he gets no ownership. I think he'll be sub 5% with this questionable tag, and with the idea that there's some other centers to play, whether it be value or not. I think he goes overlooked entirely. I think that's super interesting for Cat, whose role has been improving recently. But if he's out, I agree with you. Anthony Edwards, D'Lo, they get nice bumps. And then secondary guys like Vanderbilt and Naz Reid would become very good value plays. I already think Naz Reid's one of the better value plays on the slate on DraftKings at 3,300. I mean, I have him at about 5.7x value here and sub 10% at 18 minutes. I mean, if he gets any more minutes, then I think he becomes just an absolute smash play. But I already think he's a pretty good value play over there on DraftKings. And I say one of the better value plays because I do think that he's going to be overlooked under 10%. So Vanderbilt I also like on both sides, but prefer him on DraftKings. On Fanduel, he's kind of priced at his ceiling at 5,900. But I mean, if you fall on him, I don't necessarily hate it. He played 33 minutes last game. I have him at 30. I guess the one thing I'm worried about is I wouldn't be surprised if they just all of a sudden like bring his minutes back down to 28, 29 minutes. So I'm kind of like anticipating that happening, or kind of being conservative with the projections here. But overall, I still think he's a strong play. On Brooklyn, what are your thoughts on this side?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to play James Harden and Kevin Durant, I can't really fault you, especially Harden. He's been James Harden again as of late. Outside of that, like, not interested. Like, Aldridge is 6K. I'd rather play, like, Miles Turner is 6K for Indiana. I'd rather play Miles Turner at that price range. I think you have a similar ceiling between, like, Aldridge and some of the value centers we talked about, like Gafford and Deadman. So I'm off Aldridge here, especially if Towns is out. If Towns is out, Aldridge is even worse play, in my opinion, because Brooklyn could probably go smaller a lot for this game. It's really just, I know Patty Mills has had some huge games lately. Bruce Brown's minutes aren't where they were, last year or in the beginning of this season. It's really just if you want to play Durant or Harden, go for it. Outside of that, I'm not really on Brooklyn.
Yeah, so the Aldridge play, I'm a little bit torn on it because he projects pretty well for me. He's actually the best point per dollar play on FanDuel for me, but projecting for 40% ownership over there, like that's a massive number for a guy who has at times struggled to see consistent minutes. Like even recently when they've essentially knocked Blake Griffin out of the rotation, I mean, sure, I guess his floor is like 27 minutes, but I mean, the guy that's going to be like 40% chalk, like, do you feel amazing about that? He's been pretty consistent as of late. I'll have some of them on FanDuel just because of the center position, especially if you consider like not being interested in someone like Cat. It's kind of it's not the strongest, and these damn sirens are going off again, man. Every time. I never done a show since I've lived at this apartment without these sirens going off. It's crazy. So sorry for those, but yeah, center at the top isn't the it's not. I should say, when you're comparing center at the top compared to other positions, I like other positions more. So spending down at center is something that I can see myself doing, but at 40% for Aldridge, that is tough.
Yeah.
But I guess like when you consider, so I guess I'll ask you this: Aldridge versus Gafford on FanDuel, where Gafford's 300 more. Would you still lean Gafford? Obviously, he'll be a fraction of the ownership, but what would you lean there?
If Towns is out for Minnesota, without question, I would lean Gafford. If Towns is in, I think I'm still leaning Gafford. But again, like, I've been on these streams a handful of times so far this season. pretty sure I found a way to talk about Daniel Gafford for whatever reason on most of them. So I'm just a believer, and we've seen him, elsewhere on teams, and 15 minutes off the bench, 12 minutes off the bench, where it's like this guy should probably be, a larger part of the rotation. So now that he's gotten his opportunity, he's taking advantage of it. So I would probably still lean Gafford, but especially, I think if Towns is out, that is not good for LaMarcus Aldridge, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I do think that Cat plays, so I think that is better for Aldridge. I have Aldridge projecting much better than Gafford, but that doesn't mean that they don't have similar ceilings. Like I still think that Gafford can match or have a higher ceiling game than Aldridge, but there's definitely options at center. So that's something to note in terms of the ownership. We just got a question about Cam Thomas. Any Cam Thomas love? Guy's been he's been chucking here. So what are your thoughts on Cam Thomas?
There's, for me, the problem is, I guess, point guard, shooting guard. There's not. I think a lot of the value on this slate comes from the wings. So point guard, shooting guard eligible on DraftKings. He's 3,100. I don't think it's terrible. You could talk me into it. What did he play? Like 20 minutes? I think he played 20 minutes last game.
Yeah, played 21 minutes, took 9 shots, 4 from 3, and then 2 games ago, 12 minutes, only took 2 shots. 3 games ago, in a blowout, 25 minutes, 11 shots from the field. I mean, I would much rather play TLC, but I mean, if you're looking for a sneaky value play on DraftKings 3,100,
I
I
think
guess I
I
don't
think
hate
you
it.
give him a bump if Towns is out. Better chance Brooklyn pulls away in this game and he can get up to 25 minutes.
Yeah, looks like Karl Towns game time decision. I don't really know if that's like a downgrade though, because it's not like he was probable and then a game time decision.
Yeah, that's not a
Yeah.
downgrade. Like if he went from probable to questionable or expected to play to game time, something like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
they'll probably just see how he feels. 7:30, 7:45, and if he's good to go, then he'll play.
Yeah, so I agree though. If Cat is out, then the likelihood that this game turns ugly is probably higher. But still, like I think if you're looking to roster Cam Thomas, because I've seen a couple messages in Discord about Thomas, I think you should know kind of what you're getting out of him. Like a guy that could very well maybe not even see the floor. I don't think that's like super likely, but I mean, him getting 10 minutes, like he's not going to get there in 10 minutes, most likely.
If
So
Bruce
that's
Brown's minutes go back closer to what they were for a lot of his time with Brooklyn, then that's probably not good for Cam Thomas because they
yeah.
can just, Harden's going to play the point, but Bruce Brown could play 2 through 4 if they want him to.
Yep, I agree. I guess we should probably talk about Claxton. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Claxton? Do you think that he will impact Aldridge at all?
Eventually, but I don't know right away. He's going to be on a minutes restriction, they said. I mean, 12 minutes maybe? But it's just another reason why I would prefer Gafford and Deadman over Aldridge. It definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, I have met about 8 minutes. But I mean, I don't know. Like Paul Millsap also really hasn't been that involved either,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously Blake Griffin's been kind of in and out of the rotation at times. So I think that if they wanted to limit Aldridge's minutes, they could do that with guys like Griffin and Millsap even before Claxton got involved. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. But all right, let's head into the next game. I think we covered that one enough. Orlando at Houston. This should be a fun one. Two teams that are young and looking to run here. Both teams in the top 12 in terms of pace. Houston leading the charge in the NBA as the fastest paced team. We have fastest paced team. We have a 2.5 point spread here, 217 total. In terms of injuries, Jalen Suggs is out for Orlando, and then on Houston we have a whole group of injuries. Right, we have Christian Wood who got hurt, came back in the game, then got hurt again, and never came back into the game. Sounds like he is ready to go. That was the most recent quote there, so he should be fine. Kevin Porter Jr. on the other hand, I saw a report yesterday that he was going to miss like extended time or some time, whatever that means, and now apparently he's questionable. So that's something to note. I haven't projected out as of right now because of that report that he was going to be expected to miss some time. So with Suggs out and Porter out, and then obviously a lot of the prior injuries like Jalen Green being out, there's some guard minutes opened up here. So what are your thoughts on this game here?
Yeah, Armani Brooks was in the value article on what would it have been Tuesday, and he paid off 32 and a half fantasy points. He's probably in play regardless, because like Jalen Green being out was the reason Armani Brooks has been on the fantasy radar as of late. And he's played 20, 25 minutes, and then he played 30 last game. And if Kevin Porter Jr. is out, probably plays 30 plus at 3,400 against a bad Orlando team. So I would like him. I have a feeling that one of Eric Gordon or Garrison Matthews is getting hot from three in this game, because the Magic are a terrible defense. They're especially terrible to spot up shooters. They allow the most points per game to spot up shooters, the most points per possession, and the highest field goal percentage. They're legitimately, last in every statistic against spot up shooters. Garrison Matthews, his minutes have been up because A, they've been so depleted on Houston, and B, they're playing small. But he actually leads the NBA in spot up points per game so far this season at 7 per game. He's shooting 51.5% off spot. It's a little bit of a limited sample size. He only played like 8 games, but hey, 4,500, you could do worse. The minutes have been great for him. And then the same goes for Eric Gordon, who, with Jalen Green out and maybe Kevin Porter Jr. out, probably plays 32 plus minutes again, and he could take upwards of 18 shots in this game. So for whatever reason, there we go. I think one of those two gets hot from three, and you feel better about them if Kevin Porter Jr. ends up sitting. And then, yeah, I mean, Jayshawn Tate, that was just wow. Like, I don't think he'll score 70 fantasy points again. I'll go out on a limb. Yeah. It's not even the fact that he had a career high in points, but then it's like, oh yeah, he had 10 rebounds, he had 7 assists, he had 5 blocks. Like, but at 6K, if everybody's out again other than Christian, like, it is worth noting, obviously, that Christian Wood played 9 minutes in that game, and Kevin Porter Jr. played 13. So there's your reason, right? But if Christian Wood's probably going to play, but if Kevin Porter Jr. is out, Tate's minutes have already been up because they're playing small, no Daniel Tice. So he would still be perfectly in play, just obviously temper your expectations.
Yeah. So during the game, I didn't even realize, because I think once Wood got hurt, I just stopped following the game, because I had a lot of Wood that night, and it already wasn't going that great for me anyway. So I just stopped watching in general. And then this morning I was looking, I go, I do my I guess my placeholder lineup. I was like, wow, that's weird. Jayshawn Tate 7,500 on Fanduel. He must have had a big game. I was thinking 45. I looked 72. I was like, my goodness, I'm glad I wasn't sweating anything that game, because
I was talking to Kalachi in Slack, and he was like, I forget what we were talking about, but he pretty much said listen, Jayshawn Tate just scored 70 fantasy points. Anything can happen, or something like that.
Seriously, that was something that was very hard to comprehend there, and I was very surprised by that. But in terms of other players on the slate, I think that, first of all, Armani Brooks is one of my favorite plays of the day. He's someone I really like today, especially if Porter's out. But even if Porter plays, I still think he's fine. He's number 1 in the player rater on DraftKings today. So 3,400 for Armani Brooks. I like him a whole lot. Makes a ton of sense as a value option. Even on FanDuel at 4,300, I also like him. I don't think he's going to get any ownership, especially if this Kevin Porter Jr. news pushes us past lock.
Yeah.
I think he'll be very low.
He's perfectly fine whether Kevin Porter Jr. plays or not. And then if he's out, you can make the case he's the best value play of the slate if Kevin Porter Jr. is out.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. And then in terms of other plays on the slate, or for the Rockets, anyone else you're prioritizing? Eric Gordon is the guy for me. It's Gordon and Brooks for me, and then Tate on DraftKings is fine. I'm not playing Jayshawn Tate at 7,500 on FanDuel. That's just never ever going to happen. But on DraftKings at 6K, he's still fine.
Yeah, Christian Wood, it's a good matchup, but I don't think I want to get there at 9,300 on DraftKings. I will say, the centers on this slate, I'd rather play Christian Wood over Sabonis. Joval's close, but he's in play. It's just he's not a top tier center for me on the slate.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's head over to the next game, or sorry, the other side of this game, Orlando. In terms of priorities, or in terms of your favorite plays from Orlando, who do you got?
It's tough. I'm definitely out on Franz Wagner. His price is up, but You can make the case that both Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba are like very strong mid-range center options because the pace is massive for Houston. They play one of the fastest paces in basketball. They have a lot of possessions against them, a lot of transition scoring against them, and their front court's A, not as good, B, they're small. So I think both are in play. Cole Anthony's price is high, but his usage prior to all these injuries and just when the season started was massive, and now you have no Jalen Suggs. I think he's fine. He leads his team in transition scoring, and Houston's allowing the most points per game in transition. And it's probably not exciting, but another kind of 4K player, Gary Harris, continues to play 32 to 35 minutes, and he's actually been better than I thought. He's been 23, 26, and 25 fantasy points. So with the injuries they have, not just to Suggs, but obviously still no Michael Carter-Williams, still no Markelle Fultz, probably plays around the same minutes again, and you could do worse. So I think Orlando, every player I just mentioned, like Bamba, Carter Jr., Anthony, and Gary Harris, I think they're all really, really viable.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. I lost my camera there for a minute, but we're back. And then in terms of the Orlando side for me, Wendell Carter on Fanduel is someone I'm really liking. Again, you can still play him at power forward and center. Mo Bamba, you can only play him at center on Fanduel. But on DraftKings, he's only 6,400. So if you wanted to fit him in there, I mean, I just think there's going to be a lot of good opportunity from a fantasy perspective in this game. Cole Anthony, someone that I have some interest in, under 15%. I thought he might get up there more in terms of popularity. I mean, the price is high, but he's someone like kind of similar to like Tyler Hero for me, right? Where the usage and the role and his production has just been so good to where it kind of justifies the price, right? With Suggs off the floor, about a 29% usage rate on the year, over 1.15 DraftKings point per minute, 30% assist rate, 21% rebound rate. So I like Cole Anthony a pretty good amount as well. But we just had a question. What are you guys doing with Christian Wood? Are you prioritizing Wood? Me personally, I'm not going to like prioritize him. I'm sure I'll get to some of them in my MME builds, but not going to be a priority for me.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, cool. Let's head over to the next game here. New Orleans at Dallas. We do have some news with Porzingis downgraded to doubtful. So he went from questionable to doubtful. So he's going to be most likely out. I have him out in the projections. Willie Cauley-Stein remains out for a personal reason. And then Josh Hart is questionable as well. He didn't play last game. So that's obviously some news that we need to monitor. And this is a guy that's been playing like 30 plus minutes very consistently. So what are your thoughts on this side?
Yeah, I mean, Luka's Luka. He's pushing 12K now because he's been unbelievable as of late. Over 50 fantasy points now in seven in a row and 9 of his last 10. So it's expensive, but we've talked about a lot of value already. So he shouldn't be too difficult to get in your lineup, honestly. And then you have the front court situation, right? No Cauley-Stein, no Porzingis, so Maxi Kleber would get a bump, obviously. Against Joval, could this be a 15-minute Boban game? Like that's always a fun question to ask. I feel like Kleber pops in the opto a lot, so I'm interested to see what you think of him. And then you have Dorian Finney-Smith, who probably plays 27 to 30, probably more minutes. The game blew out the last couple times these teams Dallas played, right? They got crushed by Cleveland, and they crushed this Pelicans team. So they haven't played a close game in a couple of days. When they last did, it was 29 or 30 minutes from him. Just not a lot of upside. And we talked about a lot of 4K and under plays, so he still probably wouldn't be a priority or anything like that as a value play if Porzingis does get ruled out, which it sounds like he will.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Kleber and Optimizer. He's someone that's projecting as a really solid value, 5x on FanDuel, 5.7x on DraftKings. So he's someone that I like a pretty good amount. I also like Brunson, and Luka is my favorite spend up option of the day. So, I mean, with Porzingis out, the usage is up to over 36%. So he's someone that I like a good amount. You mentioned the price on DraftKings. He's not really that expensive on FanDuel. He's only 10.5 over there because on FanDuel, you don't get all the bonuses for the threes and the double and the triple-double bonuses, which obviously goes a long way for a guy like Luka. So he's always going to be a better play on DraftKings, but he's cheaper on FanDuel, so he's more than fine over there. Kleber and Luka and Brunson are probably my favorites. I was hoping that one of these guys would be, super low, and it looks like Kleber is going to be the lowest of the bunch, 8% on FanDuel, 15% on DraftKings. So I think he's pretty interesting. But as far as Hardaway, probably don't play him a ton. I'm sure I'll get to him a little bit, but probably won't be a priority for me. And then on the Pelican side of things, I'm pretty much not interested in any of it unless Hart is out. Like if Hart's out, that would be a nice bump for guys like Graham and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. But I don't know if that would make them like lock type plays for me. I mean, I already think Graham's fine on DraftKings at 4,700. Same with Nikhil Alexander-Walker at 4,500. But even if Hart is out, I don't know if he'll be I don't know if those guys will be must plays for me. The one guy that is somewhat interesting on DraftKings is Willie Hernan Gomez. 4K on DraftKings. I have him at about 5.8x his value here, just at playing just 16 minutes. I think there's a lot of safer value plays, but he's just someone that I figured I would note. What are your thoughts on the Pelicans, guys?
I have a little interest in Joe Val in tournaments. Obviously, didn't perform last time these teams played. The Pelicans got blown out in that game. But like Dallas for the last couple of years has been one of the worst post defenses in the I did it again in the NFL in the NBA. And they're not good against, like, they're just not good inside. We saw what Jared Allen did against them, and Jared Allen's not going to have the type of usage and post touches that Joe Val is going to have. So in tournaments, I actually do have interest in him. The price tag on Ingram is interesting. I just don't really want to go there. But for me, like, I actually wrote about Devontae Graham in the value article. Again, like, it doesn't hurt if Josh Hart's out, but it's not like Josh Hart's this massive usage player who handles the ball. It would just, if anything, give maybe a couple extra minutes, maybe some more rebounding opportunities for Devontae Graham. But he's played 30 minutes in about 3 of the last 4. Matchup's not bad. Like, you could do worse than Devontae Graham. He's probably like a filler play, right? Like you have 4,700 left or whatever. I would feel pretty decent about Devontae Graham, but the ceiling isn't massive or anything, especially with Ingram and Joe Val pretty much dominating the offense.
Yeah, 100%. All right, on to the next game. We have 3 games left, and we have about 40 minutes to break it down. So we might get out of here a little bit early, but hit us with any questions that you guys might have as we're going through these last 3 games. We'll do these last 3 games, and then we'll answer some questions, and we'll see where we're at. So Boston at Utah here. In terms of some injury news, we do have Jaylen Brown, who's going to be out due to rest. Obviously, he's dealing with the COVID stint and then I believe it's a groin injury. So he's going to be out for this one due to some rest. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, well, interested to see where Tatum ranks for you with Jaylen Brown out. Usage rate's over 34%. He's 1.3 fantasy points per minute with Jaylen Brown off the floor. And then obviously we've seen when Jaylen Brown has been out, you see Dennis Schroeder get a bump, enters the starting lineup usually. 6K for him, like, not a priority. Like, for me, it's really just Jason Tatum. Horford's 6,800 against Utah. Like, we talked about a lot of centers that are either a little bit cheap or a lot of bit cheaper or a little bit more expensive. Marcus Smart, 6'1". Like, the minutes are going to be there for him and Schroeder. You just don't really get excited about it.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think Tatum's interesting because I don't think even with the news of Brown being, I don't think he'll be overly popular. I have him at 6% on Fanduel, 5 on DraftKings. The one play that I do think is going to pick up some steam is Schroeder on Fanduel, 22%. He's only 5'5", so I think he's fine. I don't know if I'll get to like 22% of him though at that rate. I think there's some other options in this value range that I like a bit more, and at that ownership, I don't know how much I'll get to of him. But as for the Utah side, I don't have any interest in this game really. Not as priority plays anyway. Like Mitchell is always a guy that I'll try to get sprinkles of because he has the ability to go for like 60 any given night. But other than that, like no real like force him into my lineups, lock him in type plays for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, we've seen, and I talk about this a lot, when Rudy Gobert scores like 17 or more real points, he's going to be one of the best centers of the slate because he's getting 12 to 15 rebounds in his sleep. So like he's always like on DraftKings, like you're getting the double-double bonus more often than not. And then if he has an outlier or a little bit of an outlier scoring game, he's going to be 50 plus fantasy points, which he's been in like 3 of his last 4. But I agree. Like this is probably the least appealing game we've had about this. We talked about in the slate, honestly.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I mean, both teams are pretty good defensively, both in the top 5 and both not really playing all that fast either. So, all right, let's head over to the next game here, taking a look at the Battle of Los Angeles, the Clippers at the Lakers. In terms of injury news, we had We had Anthony Davis questionable with a thumb injury. I mean, I feel like it's in his contract that he has to be on the injury report with some type of illness or ailment or something, but he's now probable, so he's going to play. LeBron James was out for like 10 days because he tested positive for COVID. Turns out it was a false positive. So he's cleared. He's good to go. He's going to be playing tonight. And then after that, what are your thoughts on this game?
Again, like it's hard to love this Los Angeles. Oh, I guess I can't say Los Angeles. This Lakers team when everybody's healthy, because it could be like LeBron's floor is going to be there. I just don't see how, when you have Luka on the slate, and we talked about Embiid, and like I'd rather play Tatum probably over any of these Lakers players. And on the other side, I'd probably rather play Paul George. Lakers playing fast. Both these teams are playing pretty fast. Like if you played LeBron James or Anthony Davis, would I say it's a bad idea? Of course not. But it's just hard for, it's just hard to get too excited about them when they're all 100% and when they're all healthy. Like Westbrook goes from a guy that you definitely play when LeBron's out to somebody at 11K that I'm probably not even going to look at. Davis is a little bit more interesting because he can still get there off anything else, but I just don't have a lot of interest.
Yeah, it's I pretty much agree with that, like 100%. I just can't make any of these top three guys on the Lakers a priority just because, you don't really get price breaks on any of them. Earlier in the season, we saw Russell Westbrook's price fall and we saw AD's price fall, but now I think the sites are hesitant to allow their prices to drop because any given night, one of them could be out. So they don't want to get stuck with having this super cheap star on their team or on their slate. So with that being the case, they're all kind of expensive and you're not really getting price breaks on any of them. I mean, Russell Westbrook at 11K is just the easiest cross off there is for me, just because if I'm paying 11K or more for somebody and it's between Westbrook and Luka, it's not even remotely close. I mean, I have Luka for like 15 points more than Westbrook on DraftKings. So the one Laker that I do have some interest in on DraftKings is Dwight Howard. I have him at 20 minutes tonight, and that's good enough for him to be significantly in play here. DeAndre Jordan has kind of been a mess recently. At
Howard, he's starting tonight too, right? Howard?
I believe so, yeah. He started the second half for Howard, or for Jordan, and I thought it was due to injury, but it doesn't look like it was due to injury now. It sounds like he's totally fine to go. Maybe it's just injury just passed now. But yeah, if Howard is starting, which they announced, I believe that was yesterday when they announced that. And so if that holds true, you got to expect more minutes from him. He played 35 minutes last game. That was with DeAndre Jordan only playing 4 minutes. But just the fact that AD played 34 minutes and Dwight Howard played 35 minutes, and they were fine. Like Dwight Howard was really good in that time. 12 points, 13 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals. Like if they're going to be playing alongside each other more, and if Howard has any chance of getting to 30 minutes, he blows up this DraftKings price. Now I don't think he gets to 30 minutes, frequently. I think in that 20 to maybe 25-minute range is more likely. But if he gets to 30 minutes, he is going to destroy that DraftKings price tag. So I really like him over there. On Fanduel, he's 5,200, so I don't like him as much. But taking some stabs on him just for the sake of saying if he does get 30 minutes, then yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. So again, played 35 minutes last game. Don't know if you count on that again here, but if he gets 30, I really think he destroys that price tag. You mentioned you would prefer Paul George on the other side if you're looking to use a stud. I totally agree. I love Paul George today, especially on Fanduel at 9,200. This Lakers defense, they've been fine, but they haven't been the same like stout Lakers defense as the past couple of years. They're 13th in defensive efficiency, but the interesting thing is they're third in pace. So it's going to be a pace up spot for the Clippers, who are 11th in pace. So I really like Paul George today at 9,200 on FanDuel. 2 games ago, I believe, when Paul George sat, FanDuel got really lucky because they had him at 8,600 and then he ended up sitting. So obviously didn't have to deal with the Paul George chalk because he was out. But yeah, super interesting for George over there. 9,200 is still way too cheap on FanDuel. He probably should be more popular than 22%, which is where I have him now. But after that, if you got to some Jackson or some Bledsoe or some Marcus Morris, I guess it's fine, but probably not priorities for me.
Do you think it could be like a Zubac game?
I could see it. I mean, especially if if Howard is out there for quite a bit.
Yeah, these teams, they have not played yet this year, so I was going to use
Yeah.
that as a comparison, but they have not played. But like, would not be stunned if you look at the box score and all of a sudden Zubac has 28 minutes, which at 4,800, if he plays 28 minutes, he would probably be right there with Deadman and Daniel Gafford, but way less. You're way less confident about it.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of wish you could like think of ways to like correlate two centers, but it's probably just not going to work most of the time in terms of lineup building. But all right, you want to go into the last game here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
the Suns going to win again?
Who knows? If a team is able to beat the Warriors consistently, that's a hat tip for them. What are your thoughts on this game, though?
Yeah, obviously no Devin Booker, Chris Paul in the when these teams just played the end of November. Chris without was that game was without Booker too, right? The first Golden State game.
I think Booker was.
Oh no, Booker was in. That was his last game he played. Yeah. So Paul was great in that game, and then last game he was fine, but you still have to love him here. I mean, the usage rate and everything is great. He's going to dominate the ball handling duties. So Chris Paul and Ayton. I like Ayton a lot here. He was great when these teams last played. The Warriors' numbers against centers look good. They actually look great. They're first against centers, but like I don't really care because they don't have anybody to stop DeAndre Ayton down. They've been a bottom team against putbacks for the last year and a half. That's where Ayton's been really good. And with Booker out, we're going to see way more post ups, way more pick and roll between Paul and Ayton. I just don't think whoever they have down there is going to be able to stop Ayton. So I love Ayton in this game. And then you can look at Cam Johnson. He's one of those, 4K, value plays, 4,200 that has upside. He's been really shooting well from the field. He's pretty much always shot well from the field, but usage bump for him. And then what do we make of campaign? Because the minutes weren't great against Detroit, but anytime they've called on him off the bench, he's been productive like he was last game. And his peripherals and his numbers with Booker off the floor are incredible, right? I mean, last game, he averaged nearly 6 seconds per touch, which is not too far behind Chris Paul. And with Booker off the floor this year, the usage rate's just over 31%.
Yeah. So I have him projected for a 28% usage rate campaign, that is. And
I think it was like 35 last game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, even if Booker were to play, like he should still be expected to get a pretty significant usage rate just because he's going to be playing with the second unit. But now with Booker off the floor or out of the game, actually, you could ask for more minutes out of him here. I have him at about 22 and a half minutes. He only played 21 last game. So 22 and a half might be a bit high, but that's definitely enough for him to be in play as a value option. The one thing I am concerned about is that he's going to be pretty popular on DraftKings. So anytime like a guy who's a value player who is not necessarily going to be guaranteed a ton of minutes, but is a good permanent production type player, you might be able to try to get away with the fade here because of the fact that, if he doesn't get the minutes that you're expecting, maybe he only plays 14, 15 minutes, has a good chance at failing. Or B, if he plays, maybe 22 to 24 minutes, but doesn't really have that elite per minute production, he could fail that way as well. So I like him. He projects really well, but if it's someone that you wanted to fade because of the ownership on DraftKings, I think that's totally fine. Probably don't get to him at all on Fanduel. I think Chris Paul is a little bit too cheap. Not projecting all that great for me, but I still think we haven't really seen Chris Paul like do anything like spectacular this year. Like it seems like last season he was just always like blowing us away with how great he was playing. I don't really feel that way about him this year. He's been very consistent, averaging 14 points, 10 assists on the season. But in the last game against Golden State, he had a really good game thanks to 5 steals, which that's always in play for Chris Paul, those massive steal upside games, which is obviously very helpful on Fanduel. So I like Paul there, but the ownership's going to be down, which is super interesting. You mentioned Ayton. I agree with everything you said about Ayton. You mentioned the thing about Golden State against centers. I wonder how much that is the fact that, sometimes teams against Golden State will go away from playing a ton of centers because obviously when Draymond's playing the 5, they don't really necessarily need a ton of size. So I wonder how much that has to do with it. But overall, pretty much agree with you on Cam Johnson as well. Cam Johnson's 3,900 on FanDuel. That's a really good price over there and still only 14% projected ownership. So a bit high, but again, at sub 4K, I am for 28 and a half minutes. I also have Landry Shamet getting 30 minutes tonight. So he's well over 5x his value. So Shamet, Johnson, and Payne are in play as value options, and then Ayton and Paul are in play as spend up options. So that's our breakdown on the Suns. What are your thoughts on the Warriors here?
It's weird. Like, this game is definitely stackable. You can play Curry, but like I don't really love Draymond because he's the same price as Ayton, who I would much rather play. Jordan Poole was great last game, but he is not cheap. And then like I just I don't really get on anybody else. I don't really love the wings from this team. Like it's weird. Like there's obviously appeal to this game, but for me it's mostly the Phoenix side. Now if you play Chris Paul or Ayton or you run it back with Curry, you can stack this game late night, whatever, and you'll feel good about it. Curry's a great play all the time, pretty much. But outside of that, like outside of Curry, I'm not really on Golden State all that much.
Yeah, I agree. I probably don't even get to Curry that much just because of Luka. But I mean, Curry's never a bad play. Like he always has just nuclear type upside, especially on DraftKings with the 3-point bonuses. On FanDuel, he is under 11K. Both these teams are in the top 2 in defensive efficiency, with Golden State being 1 and Phoenix being 2. They're also both top 7 in pace. So if you wanted to kind of bank on a fast-paced game, but maybe some tough defense, but with the increase in possessions, just kind of getting you to the promised land in terms of some fantasy production, that's kind of what you can hope for. But outside of that, like there's not really a ton that I'm prioritizing from Golden State.
Yeah, and like it's just hard for me to get to Draymond because I love Ayton. I think Ayton probably goes overlooked given the fact that everybody will just say, okay, the wings and obviously Chris Paul get the bump, but I think they're going to play a lot more through the post in this game with Ayton. And we kind of saw that he just dominated Golden State the last time his teams played, and nothing's changed. I mean, the only thing that's changed is that he might get more opportunities because Devin Booker did play in that game. By the way, Kevin Porter Jr. is a game time decision. So,
okay. I mean, I would still be pretty surprised if he plays, to be honest.
And then we got some lineups that aren't surprising. It's Cleveland's same starting 5, Washington's same starting 5, and I believe Miami came out the same starting 5 they had in their last game of Lowry, Hero, Robinson, PJ Tucker, and Deadman.
Yep, that looks right. All right, let's go through some questions here. We're done with the game by game, so we'll go through some questions, and then we'll probably get out of here a little bit early today, since we kind of got through those games pretty quickly. But we will be in Discord up until lock, and I see Javi's in there now. So if you're looking to get some questions in there up until lock, feel free to do so. So LeBron and Reed, or Vanderbilt and Mitchell, assuming Cat is out.
So LeBron and Nas Reed, or who's the second part? Sorry.
Vanderbilt, and I'm assuming Donovan Mitchell.
See, there I might go the LeBron side.
Yeah.
That's close, though. Like,
yeah,
you feel better about Vanderbilt, but like you said, like I wouldn't be surprised if Vanderbilt, maybe his conditioning's not great with the illness and he doesn't play 34 minutes or whatever. Maybe he's still in that 27, 28 range he's kind of been in.
Yeah, they just have a couple of guys there that they can just give minutes to as well to cap his minutes. But I mean, I guess we should start by saying that I think Cat will play, so I would recommend considering that before throwing that in a lineup. But
seems like important information.
yeah. Shake going to get more run with Tobias out. What are your thoughts on Shake Milton?
I mean, I feel like Shake will get more run, but a lot of the times with the Sixers, and it's a lot of times with a lot of these scoring players off the bench, if they're off to a good start and they're contributing, they'll get more minutes. If not, they'll just probably play the same minutes they normally play. So, I think it's more Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tyrese Maxey getting more of the bump, because it's not like they're going to put Shake at the power forward. Like they have the guys that they can still play Maxey where they play Maxey, and Korkmaz can play. Like they've played Korkmaz at the 4 this year, but that's been more necessity when guys have been out, when Tobias and Embiid and Matisse Thybulle were all out. So I don't think they want to play Korkmaz at the 4 in the spot. So that means Korkmaz plays more the 2 and 3, and there's just more players that can play the 2 or the 1 where Milton's going to play. So I'm still not overly excited about Milton with Tobias out.
Yeah, I agree. Gary Harris, Landry Shamet, or neither?
Harris for me.
Okay. Nas Reed or TLC?
I mean, it's obviously TLC if Towns is in, but I'm assuming you're going TLC because you are pretty convinced that Towns is going to play.
Yeah. Let me check the projections here. I'm curious.
I just had like the craziest, like I saw Fantasy Labs tweeted that Giannis is doubtful for Saturday, and I'm like, we didn't even talk about Milwaukee, and I remember it said Saturday. I was like, whoa, we should probably get on this.
Yeah. Okay, let me check the projections here. So I have TLC at about 19, and I have Naz Reid at about 18.8. So I would also prefer TLC, but if Cat is out, Naz Reid by a mile. Maxey or John Collins?
I'm gonna go Maxey.
Yeah, I agree. And this is for the turbo slate. So, you know what? It's Anthony too. So Anthony's a big Philly guy. So I'm assuming he wants to play Maxey. He wanted that answer. So I think we passed the test. I just saw Anthony Simons was ruled out. And for some reason, I thought I read something about Ben Simmons. So we're both tripping with these reports here. All right. Armani Brooks looks to be the best play on the slate and isn't even remotely close if Kevin Porter Jr. sits.
I can't disagree. I don't think he's gonna score more fantasy points than Luka, but obviously,
yeah.
But all jokes aside, I liked him the last couple slates. He's a very good value play if Kevin Porter Jr. plays. He's, I think, the best value play if Kevin Porter Jr. is out.
Yep, I have like I mentioned, I have Porter Jr. projected out right now. I'm just kind of sticking to my guns there, and it's by over a point per dollar. Him being the best value play on DraftKings, and is also number one in the player rater on DraftKings. So
there you go.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Herm says in case this becomes a fire drill, I think Naz is a straight up lock if Cat is out. As in, don't even think about it and put him in every single lineup. What are your thoughts on that? You agree?
It's tough to argue. I mean, he's been productive, and he probably gets to at least 25 minutes or so. So it's tough to argue.
Yeah, I mean, if Cat is out and then KPJ is out, you have Brooks and Naz Reid. Let's just say you can only play one of them, and in the world where you can't play more than one value, which one would you prefer?
Brooks.
Okay, I think I agree with that.
It's close.
But it is very close. Obviously, like for me, I would probably try to get both of them in there. But again, I do think Karl Towns plays tonight. But just so that you guys are prepared, make sure you're monitoring that news. We're going to get out of here a few minutes early. But before we do, I want to read off a little something. Are you struggling with NBA DFS to start the year? I hope not. But if you are, check out FTNDaily.com. Our NBA package includes a state-of-the-art optimizer that covers every slate on every day, which I also run through, I think, 2 or 3 days a week and on my show, The Optimal, which airs for free at 2 p.m. Eastern Time every single day, Monday through Friday. But you also get proprietary player and ownership projections from somebody named Kyle Murray and Alex Blickel. You get NBA on-off splits and advanced DVP tools, and the infamous FTN NBA premium Discord channel and rankings from Fast Eddie Fear and Kawhi Eisenberg every single day. Prices starting out at $49.99 per month, and you can use code FTNTV for 15% off for every single month. And just to repeat that, code FTNTV gets 15% off. That's a big price cut there. So highly recommend jumping on that. If you guys are watching this on the YouTube, please like the video, subscribe. We're looking to put more videos, more live streams over on the YouTube side of things. So all the likes and the subscribers really help us and are kind of help us to do that more. So is your favorite guy in his range at DK? Josh, I don't know what that question means. Is Can? I don't know who Can is. Cam
Johnson?
Cam
Campaign?
Johnson?
It's gotta be Cam Johnson or Campaign.
Let me
I mean, if it's Campaign, he's not my favorite at that price range because we've already talked about Armani Brooks. If it's Cam Johnson, he's 42. I don't think he'd be my favorite, but he'd be high up.
Yeah, it's he's talking Cam Johnson. So
okay.
I would also prefer Brooks. Obviously, if you're kind of stuck with the price, then it's on small forward is, let me see on FanDuel. Is Brooks, okay, Brooks is just shooting guard eligible. So I guess on FanDuel, if I had to pick a guy down there at that range at small forward, it would be him. So yeah. But yeah, there's what's that? There's 3 Cams: Cam Johnson, Campaign, and even Cam Thomas if you want to get real cute with it. But all right, that's going to do it for the show, guys. Appreciate you all for tuning in. We will see you guys. I'll be back tomorrow with Javi. So check us out tomorrow. Have a good weekend. Have a good Friday. We'll see you later.